I'm a demonstration. Okay, now I guess I can get going.
Get
I'm
going.
Jack Gillis. I'm a demonstration fly tyer. I've tied at such events as the Salbug Rendezvous, the FFI National Expo, Oktoberfest, Trout Fest, Texas Fly and Brew Fest, TRWD Fly Fest, and several others. I currently sit on the FFI Fly Tying Board of Governors. I chair the online pro series, and I currently hold the gold level award for fly tying from FFI. And I'm working on the awards scheme through the Fly Dressers Guild in the United Kingdom, as well as becoming certified as a fly tying instructor or fly dressing instructor for the Game Anglers Instructors Association in the UK.
That's a lot.
I serve on a lot more, but I'm trying to get out of some of those.
Well, welcome to our guild, and thank you for doing the instruction for tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. The first one we're going to tie tonight, let me go ahead and put is a flashback pheasant tail nymph. Just, by way of history, the pheasant tail nymph was invented by a guy named Frank Sawyer. Frank was the river keeper on the River Avon in England. And he was responsible, of course, for working with wealthy clients to make sure they caught their trout when they came down to the river. That led him, in those days, most everything was a dry fly there. And it led Frank to come up with a new genre called the sunken nymph. And of course, they were designed to be fish subsurface to imitate small Baetis insects. The first one he designed, and the one that's become the most popular, is the pheasant tail. Of course, it's simpler than most pheasant tails we see tied here. I'll be tying that tomorrow night on Al Beatty's program. It only involves copper wire and pheasant tail fibers. These were invented, though, I guess, in an era where, like I said, dry fly fishing was the norm, and his sunken nymphs opened up a complete new world of fly fishing as he learned that subsurface flies were more efficient than dry flies, and began developing the techniques to fish these. So he created, or what came along is the current style of nymphing, which is known as Nether Avon style, which was named after a village alongside the Avon River in England, where he fished the most. And this method involves what they call sink and draw, where the fly is allowed to sink and then made to swim upwards to the surface, either by pulling in line or raising the rod tip. The rise of the fly in the water columns intended to mimic the motion of an emerging insect moving from the bottom of the river to the surface. The goal is to have the fly rise right in front of a targeted fish, and of course induce it to take the fly. The flashback that I'm going to be doing tonight is a variation that adds tinsel to the fly, and its real purpose is to imitate the air bubble that a lot of natural aquatic insects will use to ride to the surface. Some people use a glass bead to do that, or in the flashback, they use the mylar tinsel. The materials we're going to be using tonight, of course, are pheasant tail. We're going to be using some mylar. We'll be using small or fine gold wire, peacock herl, and then I use these fulling mill hooks. This one's a 35105. This fly is typically tied in a size 12 to 20, although I'm going to tie it just a little larger tonight so you can make better use of it. This is one of the completed ones. So let me get set up here.
Jack, I hate to mention it, but your vise is a little bit off center. If you can center it in the screen.
All right. That better?
Much better.
Okay, good. Thanks, Al. I like these fulling mill hooks. They seem to be very well made. They're sharp and they're quite strong. Now, you know, this was originally designed for grayling, but then it was quickly found out to work really well on browns, cutthroats, and rainbows. So we're going to use black thread. And we're going to start the tie. Well, I guess I better tighten it in. We're going to tie back to just above the barb on the hook, if there were one. Then we're going to take 4 or 5 pheasant tail fibers for the tail. And these come back just beyond the bend of the hook. You can do the Shankly method if you want. It'll work out about the same. It's pretty much personal taste. And then we'll tie these up to the front just to create an even body and trim off the waist. Then we're going to tie in our gold wire. Now you want to take off a little extra piece of gold wire, make it a little extra long, and I'll show you why in a moment when we get up to that area. Tie it in on the near side about the 5 o'clock position. All the way back to the beginning of the, where we tied in the tail. And just put it out of your way somewhere. Now at this point, we're going to take about 6 pheasant tail fibers. Trim off the butts so they're square and even, and then we're going to tie those in at the same spot. Come back forwards to about the 2/3 spot. And then we're going to wrap fibers forward to create the body. You could use hackle pliers if you prefer. I just find it's easier to use the index finger method to hold them in place. They're brittle anyway. And once you reach about the 2/3 spot, we're going to tie those in. And trim off the waist. Now we're going to take the loose end of the copper wire and we're going to counter wrap it forward. About 4 turns, 3 or 4 turns. And secure it in place. Now at this point, take our thread forward just a little bit, and we're going to build a thorax base with the copper wire. And we can secure it in place again. And at this point, we want to take the mylar and take a small strand. We're going to tie it in just at the front edge of the thorax. At this point, we're going to take 2 or 3 strands of peacock curl. Cut off about the first inch, inch and a half, some of the most brittle. We're going to wrap it backwards to about the 2/3 point where we finished the pheasant tail body or fiber body. Covering up the copper wire underneath on the thorax. Come back to the front and secure in the peacock curl. And of course, trim off the excess. Then we're going to fold over the mylar tinsel on top. Trim off the waist. Build a small head. Do a 3 or 4 turn whip finish. Add your head cement. And then you have your flashback pheasant tail nymph.
Excellent. You want to talk about fishing it?
This is one, of course, like I say, it's mostly for trout, rainbow, cutthroat, browns. As it sinks to the bottom, then you slowly tug it as you pull forward and it rises to the surface. Hopefully, right in front of the fish you're trying to land. Typically, it's tied in sizes 12 to 20. And, it tends to be highly effective on both rivers and lakes, and especially during small to medium dark mayfly hatch.
So does anybody have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. Just unmute yourself.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When you wrap the copper wire to form the thorax, was that intended to just add some weight to the fly?
Is to add some weight and also builds up the body of the thorax a little bit in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
I have a question for you. What did they think of Frank Sawyer when he went from dry flies to inventing a subsurface fly? Did people look at him any differently because of that, or they just thought, well, that's cool?
From what I can understand, he was so well respected in that part on the Avon River that people didn't expect any less of him than him to design a fly. But it wasn't one of those things, from what I understand, where everybody said, "Oh, you're just totally crazy." Most people were fascinated by it, from what I can tell.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Jay, I don't know who Jay is, has a question.
Okay.
Do you see any difference whether you use green or bronze pearl?
No, I don't. I mean, if you go back to the some of the recipes, they call for pearl lux, but I think it's just a matter of giving it that flash so it appears to be the air bubble on the rise. Again, you can do the same thing with a glass bead.
Okay, that's all I got in the chat box.
Okay. The next one we're going to tie is called a Bibio. It was created in the late 1950s. It's for, brown, rainbow, and originally created for Atlantic salmon and sea trout. And then found out it worked really well on brown and rainbows as well. I'm using tonight a fire hose stick 618. This one is typically tied in a size 8 to 14. I'm tying a size 8 tonight. The materials we'll be using are black and red dubbing of your choice. A lot of the people in Europe, of course, use silver. Then a dyed black cock hackle, rooster hackle, black thread, and fine oval silver tinsel. So we're going to start with a thread base up just maybe an eye length behind the eye. Run it back to the barb, or where the barb would be if there were one. All fire hose sticks are barbless. If you haven't used them, they're a great little hook. They're very extremely sharp. I mean, when he says sharp, he means sharp. They're from, used to be Bozeman, Montana, but Joe moved up to Whitefish, I believe, no, Kalispell, as he also went into the manufacturing ammunition. Now we're going to tie in a couple of inches of fine oval silver tinsel. And we're going to wrap back to the starting point or above the barb. Then we're going to start with the black dubbing. The noodle here to your thread. You won't need a lot at this point because we're going to wrap in a small area. What we're going to end up with is the black. We're going to wrap on here at the rear. About that size. Then we're going to add in red so that it's about half the area of the black. And then we're going to tie in just a little more black to match the size of the other black. Okay. At this point, we're going to take a black cock hackle.
Ed Hughes made a comment. I'm glad you didn't use seal skin.
They use it mostly in Europe still, and I think Canada. I don't think we can get it here. There's several different types. I like alpaca dubbing. It's just a favorite of mine. Then we're going to tie in the hackle. And we're going to palmer it or wrap it rearward. Of course, we want to shape the hackles as we're going backwards. Probably going to be about 5 wraps. Should be sufficient. And then you're going to bring your silver tinsel forward and tie in the hackle and just secure it more with about 4 or 5 evenly spaced wraps as you come forward. Then you can remove the excess. And then we're going to take one more cock hackle. Secure it just behind the eye. And then we're going to create a collar using it, usually around 3 wraps. Is sufficient. Trim out the excess. Create a small head. And of course, whip finish. And there you have a Bibio wet fly.
All right. I have a question about, you said you like alpaca dubbing.
I do.
Why?
It's just the way it's not overly coarse. It's still somewhat fine. You know, it just applies very easily. You know, we were watching, I believe it was on Al's program the other night, and Tim Camisa was talking about the new Semperfly Kapok dubbing. That's all he uses now. So I think it's more of a personal preference a lot of times as to what we want. I
Mhm.
just found for me, adding the alpaca into the noodle and tying it on was much simpler than something like Superfine or some of the others.
Mhm.
It also repels water pretty good.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dolores, and I have a question.
Okay.
First of all, could you put something lighter behind the fly so we could see a better detail of it? And then when you place the hook in the vise, it looks like you covered up the tip of the hook. The point.
I do.
Can
You know, that's just a
tell me-
personal preference. I tie a lot of Atlantic salmon flies, the classics, And the points on some of those, 6/0, 7/0 hooks is extremely sharp. And I simply got tired of putting Band-Aids on all the time. So I've started tying them with inside. There's also another thing. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if I have the box here. Some people use like an earring cover, the stud covers, and to cover up the tip of the hook or the point of the hook.
I think I've ever heard of that. I'll have to look that up. Very interesting. And I would also like to compliment you on the handout, how well it was done. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I liked it too. It's, can you explain a little bit how that came about? It was with all that description. Jack, you were telling me about it earlier.
All about how I started doing the layouts.
Yeah.
I started, Dutch Bachman and Barry Webster use that layout a lot. If I'm not mistaken, Hal may as well. And we have a certain format that we have to do every month at FFI. I also chair the Fly of the Month committee. And we have to turn in a fly every month, and it has to be in a certain format, which we've created into a template. So rather than just having a series of photos and a description at the bottom, we've learned to give the step-by-steps right next to the fly, a photo of the fly as we're tying it.
What software do you use to create that? How do you do that?
Created in a Word document, and then I just use my camera to take the photos here at the Vice, and then
You just put it in the middle of it.
insert them. And then once it's in a PDF, I'm sorry, once it's in a Word format, you can also save it as a PDF in Word.
That's pretty interesting. So does anybody have more questions?
This is Dolores. I have another one. Could you please put your first fly in with
Sure.
a light background to it so we could see it
Okay.
a little bit better? And when you hide the end of the hook in the vise, that doesn't dull the point at all?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't bent it or anything like that.
Could you twist that a little bit now?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Kind of see the flash on top there.
Uh-huh. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have worn a light green shirt, I guess, or blue.
Well,
Forgot to change shirts.
we could see it pretty clearly, but the black background, because we have the black hackle, it's like you kind of melted into it a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
and this
could see
shirt's
it.
kind of a camouflage light green and dark green. So,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
90 degrees here today. So I forgot to go put on my long sleeve shirt.
Well, we had a good group of people. There's 30 people came tonight.
Great.
And Jack, I want to thank you so much for preparing all this, and especially we really liked the handouts. It's really good. And
I won't show you rest of the room.
so it's okay if we copy that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
it's-
please feel free to.
Okay. Well, I have a question for the audience here. If you could go, let me go with the gallery view here and stop the pin. If you guys can help me out a little bit here. I'm going to ask a question. If you could unmute yourself and speak up. I'm going to be doing some planning for the next series. And I'd like to know who likes what the best. So you can put it in the chat box if you want to, or you can unmute yourself. Who likes mostly rivers or mostly lakes as far as patterns go?
This is Dolores. I like rivers. I like tiny flies and dries.
And dry, rivers and dry?
Everything
Okay.
dry.
Everything dry.
A few wet flies / soft hackles.
Okay. And with soft tackle. And what do you usually treat fish for? Trout?
Here locally, we fish a lot for sand bass, white bass, chironomid, um, it's Guadalupe bass.
Mhm.
But 99, I can't remember the last time I fished in a lake. It's always
Okay.
a stream or river.
And mostly rivers.
Mhm.
Okay. And what time of year do you guys like to fish? When it gets warmer?
Sherry, this is Doug.
Hi, Doug.
Sort of a generalist. I love lakes and lake flies and lake fishing, and I love river flies and river fishing all year round when, when the ice isn't on the lakes.
Yeah.
But my interest is fishing the seasons, if you can fish the hatches or what food is in the body of water that you're fishing and what flies here in Central Oregon best imitate those or have been most successful
Mhm.
throughout the course of the year.
Well, that's good input. So what I'm going to try to do is get some diversity going on. And I know a lot of people are here, you're logging on for dry and wet flies. And does anybody have anything that they want for steelhead? I mean, are you still got some steelheaders here? They want some more steelhead flies?
I still
Barry?
find steelhead flies quite a bit.
Okay. Steelhead. So what about the complexity of the flies? Because some of these flies are, what we call guide flies, that the guides, quick, get it done and get it out there, versus the complexity kind of fly with has lots of pieces and parts. So we have a few of those like that. Is there anybody that likes the more complex flies? I still see a lot of muted individuals. So it's like, you guys
As I get
speak up.
older, Sherry, I like the simpler flies just because they're faster and easier to tie.
Okay, Phil. Yeah, good.
Uh-huh.
It's simple.
Sure, this is Doug again. I like ones that are functional. I don't mind a little more complex, but I don't have a real interest in a fly that takes 2 days to tie and then you're ready to put it in the water.
Right, and it comes apart on the first fish.
Or
Of
you just
course,
don't want that where you hook it on a bush and lose it.
Yeah.
So I like ones,
sacrifice the tree
simple ones.
gods.
ones that work well.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, that's the whole point in tying. Of course, there's several of us that do tie classics, and that has a joy in itself if you want to spend a couple of days tying one. But there's not a lot of call for that. I haven't had anybody ask me to have tie more classics, but it looks like dry flies and nymphs that really work, that aren't too complicated to tie. Does that sound about right for you guys?
Something unique every now and then, like I think, who was it? Dutch was doing the George Grant flies last week and the
Oh, yeah.
on spots flies.
I couldn't write fast enough. I
Yeah.
loved that presentation.
Well, if you get George Grant's book, it was typewritten by, I believe, in the
Mhm.
early 80s. It's a great book and it'll
Yeah.
walk you through it. Although
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a hard technique to teach on a Zoom class.
Well, that was really, really well done, because just turning the vise the opposite way, so you could see the hook and how the weave actually goes together instead of just one side of it. That was incredibly good. I loved that presentation. Of course, it made me get out Alan Gretchen's book and the Grant book. Now they're sitting front and center on my desk. So I'm
We tied
gonna,
them all day Saturday. I have the luxury of being able to sit next to him every Saturday.
really,
Dutch and I and Barry and Dave
you
Etkin,
got,
and all tie together every week.
that's good. That's really good. Well, if you want to, now is a good time, Jack, for you to go ahead and give a little advertisement for the up and coming virtual expo.
Okay. November 4th, 5th, and 6th, the virtual expo again. We're just now in the process of the planning stage of how many fly tying workshops we're going to have. For example, we're going to be teaching a bronze class, a silver tying class. We're going to have several technique classes. I'm not sure what all done at the education center, but I know they're probably introducing a new fly fishing development program at that time. And Fred Dupre is going to have, I believe it's 84 fly tires. And that's November 4th, 5th, and 6th. And the price will remain the same at $25 this year.
All right. So if anybody has any suggestions for me on how you would like to see things done differently, is there something we're missing during all of the handouts, or suggestions for flies, please don't hesitate to send me an email. And I got to thank all of our presenters. Oh my gosh, you guys have absolutely been terrific for us.
Sure, if I could do one more plug.
Sure.
FFI has started its online fly tying group pro series. Coming up next Wednesday night, April the 20th, 7:30 Central, 5:30 Pacific. We're going to have Mike George, and he's not going to be just tying a fly. Mike's going to come on and talk about the tools he uses, how he selects the hair, the difference in the hairs, and then the various techniques and how to apply them. So it's going to be more of a technique presentation. We will be doing that again the first and third Wednesdays in May with, I believe first Wednesday in May is going to be Ron Mayfield. That'll be a saltwater pattern that night. I'm talking with someone about doing the technique, which will be the third Wednesday in May. And then we'll take the summer off and start again the third Wednesday in September and go through into the year.
Oh, great. So
This is Doris again. Jack, are those recorded and are those put on YouTube or anything? Because our club meeting is Wednesday night. And
Okay.
that sounds like an awesome class that I would not want to miss.
They are being recorded. Rhonda is in the process of finding a place to put them permanent home on the FFI website. So that should be hopefully set up, I'm hoping before the end of next week. She and I have been writing the introduction for it in the website ad, and then it should be on the front page of the FFI website. But they are recorded. Worst case, email me and I can send you the link.
Thank you.
yeah, Kathy Burns wants to know, how do you sign into the programs?
You can go to the FFI Facebook page. You can go to the Fly Tying Group Facebook page. And again, I'm not sure if it'll be up on by April 20th or not, but it eventually will be on the FFI website as well. But the FFI Fly Tying Group Facebook page is the perfect place to access it.
Okay, it looks like John Smith has got a deal in here. He says innovative use of materials and interesting techniques. So techniques seem to really take front and center for a lot of the stuff we're doing. So we might go with a lot of techniques and new stuff.
We're trying to do more of that at FFI on the Fly Tying Group because, people feel like they can go watch Al Beatty, for example, on his YouTube channel and get good instruction. But it's how to tie fly rather than different techniques on how you select hair, how you select threads, what are the different hooks, and so forth.
Well, John Kreft does a great class on selecting hair. And I'd learned more in a half an hour from him. And he schools me on how to buy it and what to look for and what depends on what bug you're going to tie. And fortunately, he usually goes to Montana the same time I do, and we go get get the hair at the same time. So I've got some really good deer hair this time from Blue Ribbon, and Blue Ribbon Flies has started filling their bins. There's been real light in the bins lately in the last couple of years, but they've been doing a lot of work recently to get the hair that we're looking for. So that's a big deal too.
One of the classes we'll have will be on hackle. And
Hackle.
can't do it in the spring, so it'll be this fall. But Chris Johnson is a whiting hackle expert, knows how to grade it. And in fact, he sells more hackle out of his shop than the entire state of Texas combined.
And who's that?
His name is Chris Johnson. He owns Living
Oh,
Water
okay.
Fly Fishing. And so he's going to come on in the fall, and he does a great about 90-minute hackle presentation.
So maybe we could get him to come to our guild class.
Possible.
Is it possible?
Very good.
I might be able to do that. That'd be great. So we're still looking to inviting a lot of our instructors back for next year and add some to our list. And we had 2 less classes this year than we did the first season. So I'm going to try to schedule 20 classes and see if we can get that planned. And hopefully within the next few months, I'll have our guild website up and running. And we will have all of these flyers that all of the instructors have contributed to these classes. We'll have them available on our website, which is really exciting. And more information about the different instructors and of course our schedules. So hopefully if I'm successful, this is new, I have a learning curve here. So we'll try to get that going so you guys will have access to all that throughout the whole season. And it will just keep them on the website. So if you don't have any other questions, thank you again, Jack, for doing this.
My pleasure.
And-
Thanks for inviting me.
And we'll see you in December. We'll start again, December 2022. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks for having the program.
Yep,
Right.
thanks a lot.
Jack, thanks, Sherry.
Okay, let's do it again. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.